Thursday, January 25th. The Anglo-French General Staff comes under intense pressure from the Allied governments. The military leaders attempt to take the initiative and consider the possibility of a war against the Soviet Union, starting with the capture of the Caucasus oil fields by British and French troops in the Middle East. They also continue to study the option of occupying the Scandinavian countries with a view to cutting German imports of Swedish iron, and also that of obtaining consent from the Belgian government to cross its territory to try to occupy the Ruhr area, the backbone of the German war industry. Belgium is determined to remain neutral and rejects Allied offers. Hermann Göring tells the governor in Poland, Hans Frank, that all raw materials and human resources in the country are to be handed over and exploited to the full for the benefit of the Third Reich. The Poles are to be slaves of the Nazi regime. At the same time, Frank sets up the Jewish ghetto in the city of Lodz. In the Sea War, U-14, captained by Herbert Wolfart, sinks the Norwegian merchantman Biarritz. Joachim Schepke's U-19 sinks the Norwegian Evering and Gudvig, and U-44, commanded by Ludwig Mathis, sinks the French vessel Tourny. Friday, January 26th. The commercial treaty between the United States and Japan, signed in 1911, expires. The U.S. Secretary of State, Cordell Hull, has given 6 months' notice that his country would not renew the agreement. In this way, the Americans can place an embargo on Japanese raw materials and armaments. In Poland, Hans Frank puts Göring's orders into effect and stipulates that, given the need to strengthen the military power of the Third Reich, the territory under his jurisdiction within the Polish general government will send to Germany all the required raw materials. Also, a minimum of 1 million workers will be recruited, half of them women, in order to boost German agricultural and industrial production. Meanwhile, Jews are prohibited from traveling on public transport. Germany's fuel reserves are declining rapidly, and Hitler sees the economic situation deteriorating. He therefore discusses with the General Staff of the OKW, the Armed Forces High Command, the necessity for the Wehrmacht to begin the Western offensive as soon as possible. The Nazi leader is worried that prolonging of the present situation will increase the risk of being unable to guarantee food for the whole population, and this could undermine his regime. Saturday, January 27th. Hitler orders the plans for the invasion of Norway and Sweden to be speeded up. Under the codename of Operation Weserübung, the High Command of the Armed Forces prepares the strategy for the occupation of both countries. To start with, the invasion will be carried out by 4 infantry divisions and 1 trained to fight in mountainous terrain and harsh weather conditions that has not participated in any battles so far. They will be joined by 3 parachute companies charged with taking the airfields. Nevertheless, the Nazi leader still has doubts about the occupation of Norway due to its long coast, which is accessible to the Royal Navy. Speaking in Manchester, Winston Churchill denounces the exploitation of more than 100,000 Czech workers who have been transferred to Germany, where they are being used as slave labor until they die. He tells his audience that the Polish people are suffering all kinds of atrocities and are being massacred, and asks them to imagine what future would await the British themselves if they fall into the hands of Hitler. They must therefore fight until the last breath, and there is no time to lose, he says. In the Parliament of Pretoria in South Africa, a proposal for peace with the Third Reich is defeated. For Jan Christian Smuts, the Prime Minister, a military man and philosopher who designed the League of Nations and later urged the formation of the United Nations, Hitler is a danger to the world. Sunday, January 28th. In Sweden, the first contacts are made between Soviet and Finnish representatives to try to find a peaceful solution to the conflict between the two countries. The Soviets are prepared to forget the government of Finland formed by communists and, in principle, accept talking to the executive of Risto Ryti. Although heavy fighting continues at the front in areas such as Kumo, where the Finns confront two Red Army divisions, diplomacy offers a chance of peace. Stalin can be in no doubt of the Finns' willingness to resist and is prepared to give up his idea of imposing a communist regime on the neighboring country. Now it is a question of frontiers and a larger maritime zone in the Gulf of Finland to protect Leningrad. Roosevelt considers the possibility of suppressing all trade with Japan, although the American ambassador in Tokyo, Joseph C. Grew, warns him that this could provoke a Japanese invasion of the East Indies to obtain the natural resources the country desperately needs. In the Sea War, U-22, commanded by Karl Heinrich Jenisch, lays a trail of mines which sink the British merchantman Eston, while Wilhelm Rollmann's U-34 torpedoes the Eleni Stathatu, and Ludwig Mathis's U-44 sinks the Greek ship Flora. Monday, January 29th. The Finnish government of Risto Risti receives a letter from the Soviet Foreign Minister Molotov, stating that the Soviet government is willing to sign a peace agreement ending the conflict. The Finns are exhausted and disenchanted with the lack of initiative and support from the Western powers, while Stalin has grave doubts about the capacity of his army, although he cannot allow the rest of the world to reach the same conclusion. Therefore, Soviet planes continue bombing Finnish ports, while the Finns keep up their siege of Russian troops in Kumo. Hans Frank, the Governor-General of German-occupied Poland, announces in Berlin that more than 60,000 Germans from the Baltic countries have occupied homes taken from Poles and Jews. More than 18,000 intellectuals, doctors, and priests have lost their lives in the Nazi invasion. Admiral Erich Raeder, the head of the Kriegsmarine, meets with Hitler to reassure him that success in the campaign against Norway and Denmark, followed by victory in the invasion of the countries of Western Europe, will give the Third Reich direct control of the mineral deposits in Sweden and northeast France. This will put an end to the shortages of raw materials and primary foodstuffs. Tuesday, January 30th. To commemorate the 7th anniversary of his coming to power, Hitler makes a speech in the Berlin Sports Palace. He heaps blame on France and Britain, who, he says, have for centuries devastated Europe and particularly Germany. He finishes by saying, "Now we will give them all the war they want." Reinhard Heydrich, head of the Reich Main Security Office, creates Department D4 in Berlin with the objective of coordinating and carrying out the deportation of Jews in the Third Reich, and orders the deportation of all of those in Germany to Lublin in occupied Poland. He also has authorization from his superior, Heinrich Himmler, to exile all the gypsies that have been arrested. In the Winter War, the famous Spanish pilot Nicolás Berries enrolls in the Finnish Foreign Legion. Meanwhile, the French propose to the British government the disembarkation of troops in Petsamo, to the north of Finland, but the idea is not accepted, as the main British objective is to control the Swedish mineral deposits which supply the Third Reich. In the Sea War, U-55, commanded by Werner Heydel, sinks the Greek merchant ship Karamiai and the British merchantman Vaclite. This makes a total of 6 ships sunk, but the German submarine is spotted to the southwest of the Scilly Isles by the French destroyers Valmy and Gepard, which are joined by the British Witshead and Fowey and a number of Sunderland Mk1 hydroplanes that see action for the first time. Together, they manage to sink the submarine, one member of its 41-man crew being killed. Wednesday, January 31st. The Finnish government announces that the number of civilians killed since the start of the war is 350,000. Despite the fighting in different parts of Finland, the Soviet forces remain at a standstill. Nevertheless, General Timoshenko is finalizing plans to launch a new offensive. Hitler and Raeder decide that Operation Weserübung will be allocated to all ships and submarines that are required to transport the infantry necessary to capture the strategic points as rapidly as possible and surprise the Royal Navy. Once the Norwegian airfields are taken, Luftwaffe planes will control the coastal waters and will be able to prevent the British fleet intervening. In the Sea War, Donitz sends a message to the Nazi leader, insisting on the need to increase the number of U-boats in active service. Meanwhile, U-13, commanded by Max Martin Schitte, sinks the Norwegian merchantman Start, and Wolf Harro Stiebler's U-21 sinks the Danish Vidar. However, U-15, captained by Peter Frahm, is sunk, and 25 crew members killed after being mistakenly attacked near Hoofden in Holland in the North Sea by the Kriegsmarine torpedo boat Iltis.